be another SC2 cast. I just downloaded a whole bunch of replays, some of the most popular replays for the past week, and surprisingly enough, these ones haven't been casted really by anyone on YouTube. So I'm going to be casting these games. We got WhiteRa at the 9 o'clock position. He's the blue Protoss player. WhiteRa probably doesn't require much of an introduction for most of you. He's been just about the most popular, one of the most popular foreigners since the beginning of the beta. So, I mean, with his performances in all kinds of tournaments, he's really proven himself. And oh god, he's a beast. Protoss player. Lots of lots of players have horror stories about playing WhiteRa, and hopefully for Dimaga's sake, he can pull something out today. He's going to be the Zerg player at the 12 o'clock position. Dimaga, known for a very aggressive style. He's also a European player, and this particular match is game 1 in a tournament. I'm not sure if it's an online tournament or a live one, but either way, tournament livelihood on the line. Usually some cash and prize money on the line, so both of these players really, want to win it. Absolutely. And it's going to be on Lost Temple. Very, one of my favorite maps. Been around since, God, 1999 or something. This map has always been a classic and should make for a good PvZ today. Very early extractor from Dimaga. Definitely wants to get that Zergling speed research just as quick as possible. WhiteRa putting his first pylon just slightly in range of his ramp. Popular place to put it because you can of course put your gateway down and then a cybernetics core, and with a zealot have a complete wall off, safe from any Zerglings for many minutes here in the early game. The assimilator only arriving at this point now. Cybernetics core on the way as well. I like this pylon placement as well, allowing WhiteRa to warp in units on the low ground if need be. This Overlord slowly and sluggishly making its way over to WhiteRa's base. I'm sure that Dimaga's Overlord will park himself somewhere in this general area. I like these spawning locations as well on Lost Temple. It makes for, an action-packed game usually. These Zerglings going to take care of WhiteRa's probe pretty much no problem. But I mean, the probe did all the scouting he can. I mentioned before that I like these spawning locations because they're so close by foot. I mean, from WhiteRa's base, it's really just a short walk up to Dimaga's. So it does make it pretty difficult for a Zerg player to take a third base. In that, I mean, the Zerg player simply is not allowed to take this one. It is just not an option. And normally, Zerg players love taking the gold base, and if they had spawned cross-positionally, that might be an option. But here today, we're going to have to look out for Dimaga picking up a third, possibly down at the main base over here. Keeping an eye on the production tab, the metabolic boost nearly complete, so these Zerglings are going to have their wings any moment, as they do occupy the Xel'Naga. This Xel'Naga is an absolutely critical point of control when you spawn at the 12 and the 9 o'clock position. Of course, this Xel'Naga allows Dimaga to see exactly when WhiteRa is going to be moving out. As well with this Overlord here, keep an eye on the expansion of WhiteRa. Of course, knowing when WhiteRa wants to pick up his natural. But again, I would certainly expect these guys to, battle for control, territorial dominance of this sort of middle no man's land here. And for the meantime, Dimaga taking control of that. One Zealot, one Stalker, one Sentry out. Sentry, of course, building up some energy, and more than welcome to force field the ramp if need be. But normally in a PvZ, that's not going to be a huge concern. Zerg players aren't usually the aggressors at this stage of the game, especially in a ZVP. And of course, WhiteRa realizes that as well. He's done some pretty effective scouting. Certainly can imagine that Dimaga is looking to pick up this expansion. WhiteRa probably realizes that he's done so already. Is Dimaga actually going to force a cancel on this Nexus? Gotta be careful. You definitely don't want that. You lose 25% of your resources, so 100 minerals there, that would be pretty good if Dimaga could force a cancel, but it's not the case. Lots of sentries out now and stalkers, but I mean, this type of unit composition can be susceptible to speedlings. unless you've got, you know, pretty solid placement with those force fields. But WhiteRa quite confident, just sort of strolls out to the middle of the map, takes the Xel'Naga, and quite possibly could be looking to put on some pressure here. There is one spine crawler in position already, these speedlings along with one queen, 3 roaches on the production tab, and lair tech on the way as well. Doesn't look like WhiteRa looking to attack just yet, and I mean, why would you? He is just getting up his second base right now, and when you're putting up your first expansion, you're not going to want to commit units to an attack. It's fine to pressure, basically what WhiteRa is doing, poking in and out of the Zerg base, forcing the Zerg player to build roaches and lings instead of drones. That's always good, but you don't want to go out for an all-out assault and quite possibly lose your army, because then of course your fresh natural base will be very susceptible to a counterattack. Stargate on the way. Very nice. We're going to be seeing WhiteRa basically producing off of 3 warp gates and 1 Stargate. We have seen time and time again, and in many of the replays that I've been casting lately, Protoss players going for that Stargate in PvZ matchups. Of course, because the Phoenix now comes out just so damn quickly, especially when you chrono boost it. You can get Phoenix on the map and get them in very scary numbers before the Zerg player often has time to react. Burrow research on the way and roach speed. So at this stage, Dimaga really staying at really low tier units. Just speedlings and I mean speed roaches soon. I like this overseer. Vital scouting information. Are these stalkers going to get into a position to deal with the overseer? Yeah, it looks like he's going to get taken out. But you know what? His death isn't in vain. It's kind of unfortunate that he wasted the extra resources to build an overseer. He could have scouted it with just an overlord. But yeah, sees the Stargate, and we're actually not seeing Phoenix. Very interesting. Void Rays on the way. At least one. I'm wondering what's going to come out from that Stargate next. WhiteRa's going to be mining off of 4 gas momentarily, as is Dimaga. And that definitely makes sense because Dimaga does have a Spire on the way, regaining map control. And I'm wondering how much gas Dimaga is going to bank. He's definitely going to want to have a supply surplus so that as soon as the Spire pops, he can pump out at least 6 or 7 Mutalisks. We'll just have to wait and see how many he goes for. And the 2 o'clock main base going to be the third base for Dimaga. Dimaga now poking in with these roaches, but this is a pretty fortified position. Lots of sentries, stalkers, and of course zealots, as well as a photon cannon, and this wall off just makes it very difficult for roaches to pressure. It's a very good thing that burrow research is complete. Pretty clutch, as you know, Zerglings and roaches not going to do much against a Void Ray. We do have a Warp Prism on the way as well. I'm very pleased to see that. I don't think we see Warp Prisms used nearly enough. They can be such a, you know, tricky unit to use. Well, I mean, you can use Warp Prisms to develop some really tricky tactics, and I've seen it time and time again. We're going to see what he has planned for them now. 1 probe and 3 stalkers. Maybe going to pick up the Island Expo. Very nice for the 3rd base of WhiteRa. Spreading creep, finally. It's taken Dimaga just a little while, a little longer. I mean, at the 12-minute mark, only having creep out to this point. Less than ideal, but it's good that Dimaga is doing it now. And we are going to see some high ground assault. We've got 1 Overlord in position, and now the Mutalisks moving in. Is he going to want to engage these roaches? Lots of support from the low ground, and 1 Void Ray gets taken out. 2nd Void Ray goes down, and are these stalkers going to get any more Muta kills before they're taken out? No. Mutalisks really pulling their weight there, taking out, you know, a couple Void Rays along with the stalkers that you know, were trying to harass this natural expansion. Excellent reaction from Dimaga. He moved the spine crawler in position. He you know, got the roaches on the low ground as well to help out. Very nice. So this base up here at the top left, the Island Expo, going to be the 3rd base for WhiteRa. And, you know, warping in a photon cannon, a couple photon cannons actually. And once again, I do not like this decision actually at all. I mean, WhiteRa is pretty obviously aware of the Mutalisk presence, so why attempt to, you know, drop only 3 Stalkers along with a probe on the high ground. I mean, I thought WhiteRa should have known that that just wasn't going to work. I want to take a look at the units tab. I got to look at the tabs just a little bit more. 10 Mutalisks out already, 16 Roaches along with 4 Queens. Lots of Queens, and as we see, WhiteRa does scout the 3rd base, and he's going to warp in a pylon to help attack this new base for Dimaga, and Dimaga doesn't know anything about it just yet. So that's going to be very sneaky. I don't believe these Mutalisks have done anything, any further harassment. I saw them over here on the minimap, but I don't think they killed very much. We have a Colossus out already. Thermal Lance on the way. Let's take a look at the upgrades. +1 attack for the ground units of the Protoss player, WhiteRa. And yeah, +1 air flyer Carapace for Dimaga on the way. No ground upgrades. And by no ground upgrades, I mean +1 ranged upgrades for the Roaches. No Carapace, though, and no melee attack. This pylon going to get taken out. Thank God, for Dimaga's sake, that he spotted that, because, you know, if Dimaga's army is out of position, you just warp in 4 or 5 Zealots. They can do a lot of damage. You know, even 3 or 4. You don't need a lot. But yeah, good thing for Dimaga, his awareness to take out that pylon. And now Dimaga slowly looking to be definitely in the lead here. 185 supply compared to 148 for WhiteRa. So WhiteRa, I mean, this is a pretty difficult barrier to break. I mean, the wall off, 3 Colossi. It's hard to even distinguish all the units that are present here. So I don't think Dimaga is going to want to push in anytime soon and attempt to engage this. But if Dimaga can just keep up on his macro, and he seems to be doing a pretty good job. Let's take a look actually at the resource tab. Very nice by both players, really keeping their resources down. And Dimaga looking to put some pressure here. The island expansion, all the Stalkers get taken out, and there are just so many Mutalisks. They're going to just, you know, eat through these photon cannons, no problem. All the probes are going to get taken out, and I can't imagine WhiteRa really doing anything else. So WhiteRa, it looks like he is going to try and counterattack, but, you know, the Mutalisks aren't very far from home. They, of course, move very quickly, and you know, can go back to harassing the island, and then back up Dimaga's army as well. So let's look out for a big engagement right now. A ton of Stalkers on the ground, going to prevent the Roaches from getting in range of the Colossi. These Mutalisks, they aren't focusing down the Colossi. I'm going to keep the Colossi selected so we can see. Nice force fields, though. Really coming up in WhiteRa's favor, as we can see the supply now almost even. And, I mean, just a couple minutes ago, Dimaga had a huge supply advantage. So that was a very nice attack by WhiteRa, and he's not done yet. He's continuing to push in here. A ton of Stalkers. Let's keep an eye out for force fields. Just a couple force fields go down. Now, what are these Mutalisks attacking? It looks like they're just attacking the Stalkers, because nobody's going after the Colossi. It looks like Dimaga here really getting ripped apart. I really like WhiteRa's reaction. I mean, Dimaga really did an effective attack at the island expansion of WhiteRa. Took out, you know, all the cannons, all the probes, and WhiteRa knew, I just can't sit on 2 bases. The Zerg player already has 4 bases. I have to attack. So WhiteRa, with that very scary Colossus ball, along with a ton of Stalkers, of course, versus the Mutalisks, really just overwhelmed Dimaga and took the game. So